What's up guys, and welcome to a hot hatch comparison. We're going to compare the new 2024 Toyota GR Corolla Circuit Edition against my 2024 Acura Integra Type S. This GR Corolla Circuit is completely stock. Obviously, my Integra Type S, fairly heavily modified at this point. I've now owned it for just about 1 year, but I still very clearly remember what that car felt like when it was stock. I drove it in the canyons and on the track quite a few times. So what's new for the 2024 model year GR Corolla Circuit Edition? Well, this car now has an MSRP of around $46,000, which puts it around $5,000 to $6,000 below the Integra Type S. For 2024, the Circuit Edition gets updated forged 18-inch alloy wheels and a few updates to the interior, including a JBL sound system. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same car, and I believe Toyota is making around 1,500 to 1,600 of these 2024 model years. For the 2023, I believe they made just under 1,500. So this is still powered by the 1.6-liter turbocharged inline 3-cylinder engine, pushing out 300 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque. The Circuit Edition gets the front and rear limited slip differentials from the Performance Pack option, which is available for the core or base trim of GR Corolla. Of course, this is all-wheel drive with adjustable front and rear bias. In track mode, it's actually 50-50, but you can also select 60 front, 40 rear, or 30 front, 70 rear. We have electric power steering. 6-speed manual transmission is your only option. It comes with auto rev matching, which we can disable with the push of this IMT button. In my Integra Type S, you actually have to go into the menu system to disable that. Overall interior build quality, it's decent, but it's a Corolla. It's not going to feel as premium as even a Civic Type R, much less my Integra Type S. And at $46,000, I wouldn't blame you for wanting a little bit more from the interior. But keep in mind, most modern generations of the Corolla have always slotted a little bit below the Honda Civic, not just in terms of build quality and choice of materials, but also space. This is quite a bit smaller than the Civic Type R and Integra Type S, but we do have some nice touches here, like this blue stitching for the steering wheel, this leather-wrapped shift knob, leather-wrapped handbrake as well with the blue stitching. The Circuit Edition, like I mentioned, gives us the front and rear LSDs. It also gives us a forged carbon roof. We have a vented hood up front and a gloss black rear wing. We're going to put this into sport mode, which firms up the steering, gives us better throttle response, and gives us this digital linear tachometer. And then we're going to adjust the GR4 system to be 30% front, 70% rear torque split. And we'll also turn IMT or rev matching off. I almost bought a 2023 model year GR Corolla Circuit Edition right before I decided to get my Integra Type S. So did I make the right choice? That's actually the question I want to answer. Right away, this car is just so easy to hop into and start driving so hard through these tight canyon corners. This all-wheel drive system just inspires so much confidence. This engine revs to 7,000 RPM. It's got plenty of performance in a straight line. Not easy to heel toe though. The pedal placement, throttle is just a little bit too recessed, or maybe a little bit too far to the right compared to the brake pedal. And the throttle response, well, it's a heavily turbocharged 1.6-liter 3-cylinder. It doesn't have the best throttle response, as you'd expect, but it does have very good brakes. Even the core model gets these brakes, and for canyon driving, they're more than adequate. Very nice firmness to the pedal and easy to modulate. The seating position in this car is a little bit high. I can definitely get a lot lower in the Integra Type S. But this car just has an altogether more rally car vibe to it. The throws to this 6-speed manual transmission are a little bit long, although it's very easy to use. and you can just chuck this thing into the corners with full confidence. This all-wheel drive system really makes the car very, very safe at the limit. Lots of lag. A tiny bit of rev hang, but very, very little. The throttle requires a very heavy blip for the downshift. The gear ratios are very nice and closely spaced, which makes the car feel punchier coming out of corners because you can keep it in the rev range, which I would say is above 4,000 RPM. That's where you get the best response from this engine. A lot of people love the sound of this 3-cylinder. I'm not one of them. I think it sounds a bit muted. The character of the engine is there. It's definitely a 3-cylinder. I don't mind that so much, but I wish there was more sound. This all-wheel drive system is just unbeatable. I drove one of these cars in the rain once on the same road, and it felt like I was driving on a completely dry surface. That was comparing it to a Elantra N, which was just fighting wheel hop, wheel spin, understeer everywhere. This just has so much traction. All right, let's try putting this into track mode now, which is 50-50 torque split. And let's also turn on IMT just to see how it performs. Does it get every rev match perfect? Because the system in my Integra Type S is pretty much perfect. It's flawless. One thing I think this GR Corolla is lacking: suspension sophistication. It doesn't feel terrible, but it's definitely quite firm. And it doesn't have adaptive dampers like my Integra Type S. So you can't really adjust between comfort, normal, and sport, or comfort, sport, sport plus, whatever it is. It just kind of always feels a bit much for daily driving. But it also doesn't soak up the bumps as well as the stock Integra Type S suspension in Sport Plus. Oh, I forgot I have IMT on. No need to heel toe. Really good brake feel here. Now in sport mode, the throttle response is a little bit on-off switchy for me. Let's actually try dialing it back into normal. We get this circular tachometer back now. Ooh, so much confidence everywhere. I can't speed shift this as quickly as I would like. Number one, because of the tiny bit of rev hang, and number two, because the throws to the 6-speed manual are actually quite long. Definitely longer than a stock Type R or Type S manual. But this really is a car that wants you to grab it by the scruff of its neck and throw it around. It's a car that can take the abuse. It's a Toyota. Now, unless you're tracking it, in which case this all-wheel drive system does have some overheating issues, as does this little 1.6 liter inline 3-cylinder, as a number of owners have discovered. This IMT system, though, works perfectly fine. No issues. Turbo lag. It's a quick little car. It's not going to rip your face off with its acceleration, but it's quick enough. But at $46,000, now granted, you are getting a limited production run model, or so Toyota claims. That's what they said for the 2023 model year, and then they came out and built another 1,600 for 2024. But let's assume that the 3,000 or so that they've made now truly is capped. At $46,000, is it really worth getting this, or should you just spend the additional $5 or $6 grand to get an Integra Type S? Or maybe just spend the same amount of money on the new Civic Type R. All right, back in my 2024 Acura Integra Type S, I just crossed 8,000 miles. Pretty sure I've had the car for almost exactly a year now. And I've done a lot of mods to it, but again, I still remember very clearly what this car drove like when it was stock. So what have I done to the car? Well, Öhlins Road and Track suspension. I'm currently at 7 kilogram front, 10 kilogram rear. Apex VS5RS wheels with Kumho V730 tires, 265, 35, 18 all around. Milltek Road Plus exhaust. Acuity reverse flow radiator hoses. PRL intercooler. Some endless brake pads. And most recently, I've just added the Acuity Stage 2 shift kit. I didn't know it was possible to improve the shifter feel of the FL5 Type R or DE5 Integra Type S, but Acuity has somehow pulled it off. It's a very affordable kit. It includes a number of upgrades to the OEM shifter assembly, including new bushings, a short throw adapter, a rocker upgrade, and a centering spring upgrade. And it basically just enhances the already excellent shift feel of this transmission. The throws are a little bit shorter now and a little bit firmer between the gates. Also, shout out to FX3D Design for providing these carbon fiber mud flaps for the Integra. I just installed them yesterday, used the included instructions, took me about 20-30 minutes, and now my paint is a little bit more protected from rock chips. So specs on this car, 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine. It's the K20C8. 320 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. So it's 20 horsepower up on that GR Corolla, and about 30 or 40 foot-pounds up as well. And the car is a bit lighter. Interior, obviously, much nicer. But with an MSRP of over $51,000, this is squarely in entry luxury car territory now. Electronic parking brake, I'm gonna leave it in sport for everything, which keeps this Milltek exhaust valve open, but the ECU tuning in sport mode is different than Sport Plus. So in sport mode, we don't get the cracks and pops from the exhaust. But I'll talk about how this car compares to the GR Corolla when it was stock. And honestly, the first thing I noticed driving this car is that even though it only has 20 more horsepower, it pulls a lot harder. I noticed that when I drove a stock FL5 Type R as well, back to back with a GR Corolla. This engine is just a powerhouse, and it has better response than that little 3-cylinder. But it's front-wheel drive, meaning there's torque steer. There's definitely torque steer. Even in stock form with the 19-inch wheels, and then if you go with a lower offset aftermarket wheel, that torque steer becomes even more pronounced. But that doesn't mean this car is harder to drive. Or I should say, that doesn't mean this car is slower in terms of the cornering capabilities. It has so much traction and grip, but you have to know how to handle it. Being a front-wheel drive car, it's not something where you can just floor it everywhere and use the throttle as if it's an on-off switch. With a GR Corolla, you can drive it like you stole it. The moment you hop into that car, you have full confidence to drive it quickly. In this car, there is a little bit more of a learning curve. You have to be more progressive with your inputs. There's a lot less turbo lag with this engine as well compared to that 3-cylinder. 3,300 RPM, put my foot down, wait about a second, and then it just starts to pull. The GR Corolla, you have to spool up those turbos and keep the revs even higher. First gear. There's the torque steer. And these brakes, even better than the GR Corolla's brakes. Brembo calipers up front, 4-piston, and these brakes do not need upgrading from the factory in terms of the caliper. I've heard from some GR Corolla owners that the stock brakes, even with pads and fluid, could use with an upgrade, with an actual big brake kit. Look at that corner exit traction. At canyon speeds, this car feels so capable. It does definitely feel quicker than the GR Corolla in terms of not just straight line performance once you have the front tires hooked up, but also the cornering capabilities of this car. Even with stock suspension, stock wheels, stock alignment, stock tires, stock everything, this thing corners so well. And a lot of that is the adaptive dampers. In Sport or Sport Plus, the damping quality of the OEM shocks is definitely a cut or two above the GR Corolla's OEM shocks. I've compromised that quite a bit with these Öhlins Road and Track coilovers with super high spring rates. Keep in mind, the stock spring rates for this car are around 4.5 kilogram front and rear, more or less. I'm now at 7 kilogram front, 10 kilogram rear. So it's definitely a stiff ride. And I have the damping setting in the back turned up to like 4 clicks out of 20. And that's all to make this car turn on track as well as possible. With the GR Corolla, that might be less of a problem because you have power being sent to that rear axle. So I would wager that you don't have to go as crazy with alignment, tires, stagger, and other sorts of front wheel drive track car tricks like I've done here. I'm now running 4.2 degrees of front camber because 3.2 just wasn't enough. With front wheel drive, you do have to make a lot more sacrifices to make your car handle really, really well on track. But if track driving isn't necessarily your thing, or you're not super hardcore about it, a stock Integra Type S or Civic Type R is still by far the better handling car than the GR Corolla. I'm talking about in dry conditions. If you're driving on a very damp surface or in the snow, it'll be a completely different story. The GR Corolla GR4 all-wheel drive system lets you slide that thing around. You can power slide it, you can drift it on low grip surfaces. In this car, you'd just be fighting massive understeer and wheel spin. But that's always been the front wheel drive versus all-wheel drive conundrum, especially for hot hatches. Which do you prefer? Do you want the all-weather capability of something like the GR Corolla, or do you want the lighter weight, more precise handling feel of a front wheel drive car that's been tuned to near perfection? The front end of this Type S is so much sharper than that of the GR Corolla. Not necessarily more steering feel. I think both cars are a bit lacking in that regard. They both have EPS steering. But in terms of precision, being able to accurately place the front end of the car where you want it to go, this car is still on another level. The GR Corolla's trump card really is that all-wheel drive system. In every other regard, I think it's inferior to this car. The shifter, the steering, the front end, the suspension, even things like the interior, the ride quality, the refinement. Let me put it into individual mode so you can hear this Milltek exhaust in all of its full glory. Definitely get some cracks and pops when upshifting at high RPM, which I don't really like, so I'm going to put it back into sport. But end of the day, I do not regret buying this Integra Type S over the GR Corolla one bit. I think the GR Corolla makes a lot more sense if you live up north, somewhere where it snows or somewhere where it rains a lot. But in sunny, dry California, the Integra Type S and Civic Type R are just objectively better handling cars. And the fact that it's even more spacious and livable, that's just icing on the cake. For the extra $5,000 to $6,000, I think it's worth every penny over a Circuit Edition GR Corolla. Although if you're looking at a core with a performance package, you're looking at more like a $10,000 difference or so. And in that case, I would still choose to pay a few $1,000s more for the FL5 Civic Type R. That's assuming you can get all of these cars at MSRP. The GR Corolla, I hear, can be had at MSRP relatively easier compared to the FL5, which in mid-2024 is still a challenge to find one without markup. So a big shout out to Sherman, the owner of that GR Corolla Circuit Edition. Let me know how you think these two cars compare. Which one do you think is the best all-around hot hatch for the money? And which one do you think has the best driving dynamics, period? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.